Hello, friends. This is the AlphaList podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the AlphaList podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the AlphaList podcast. I'm your host, Toby, and today I'm super excited that I have my first real industrial IoT CTO or CEO, formerly CTO of Software AG. It's Bernd Groß, as I said, former CTO of Software AG, co-founder of Cumulocity, a successful exit, and then he bought back his company from Software AG. Why? Because AI is changing the physical world now. Turbines, elevators, machines, and maybe your architecture too. Bernd, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to our discussion.
I typically start very early in your childhood. And Bernd, you're the youngest of 7 kids. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
And you're a full stack nerd household, as far as I understood. Your brother is also in tech, or?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say half, not full stack, but actually 5 brothers, 1 sister. And my father is not a tech at all. So he's more financial services business and a banker, let's put it this way. So, and actually when you look what they did in banks in terms of digitalization just 20 years ago still, it's amazing how low tech that business is. So I wouldn't call them full stack tech.
Okay. And you're the second or the third or the?
No, I'm actually the last one. The last out of from 7 kids.
So you could cheat. You observed everyone and then pick the strongest choice, which was tech.
Well, there's various jokes about that, but actually, when you are the youngest out of 7, you can imagine what's happening around you. At our house, I remember my parents. They're very focused on family, on education, and we had friends around from my siblings, and it was always busy. There was always something, right? And it was super difficult to find quiet time, honestly. So I went, I don't know, that's a kind of a funny thing, but actually I went to public libraries to find quiet times, because at home it was too busy sometimes, it was hectic. One of the benefits which gave me is nowadays, it's still there. In a noisy environment, I can concentrate a lot. I have no issue with noisy environments because of my childhood in that large family. So, but actually, to your question, when I think you hinted towards how did I get in contact with technology, with software engineering, and so on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I took that over from some of my older brothers who looked into that. Actually, they built up their PCs and I was just sitting there and watching. And then I became interested myself. And first PC we had at home was not really a PC, but it was called, I think it was a ZX Spectrum. I don't know if you remember that. It's probably not your, that was very early days, right? ZX Spectrum.
I started with a VC20, which is Commodore, but pre-C64.
Yeah.
And I bought it on the flea market. So yes, I'm one generation or a few years behind you.
No, that's right. So the Spectrum was like a small device, really, and you could actually program in BASIC, very, very simple. And you had to connect it to a TV, right? And now think about, I mentioned our household with 7 kids. There wasn't too much airtime for you in front of a TV because people wanted to watch TV and not having me sitting there and programming with a ZX Spectrum. So that was quite funny times. Yeah. And the monitor was really a TV. Yeah. So that was really old school and, old times. And then actually, Commodore was also, at the Commodore in between before going to, a self-made PC. Yeah.
And was that basic programming or what was that?
Yeah. That was basic programming.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
nothing really fancy and so on. Just playing around and then soon after, I mean, the modem-based connectivity came around. So where you started to do some, web experience, the first things. I think the first killer application, was it then email or I can't remember what was it. Exactly, yeah.
I think Mailbox was before, etc. Right?
Yeah,
and then I also remember those times when you had those magazines where you had like code listed and you were like basically typing letter by letter, kind of not really getting the gist of it. One thing that also sparked my attention. So later, I guess, did you study IT or what was your like? How did you continue your nerd path then?
Yes, exactly. I went to an engineering school, so I studied actually engineering. I'm a what they call diploma engineer, so kind of I think that was it's like a comparable with a bachelor, if you would call it a bachelor nowadays. And then that was my engineering, and I started also to work in an engineering setup in the first years of my career. Yeah.
I read like an interesting bit that was that like Nokia once wanted to hire you, and I mean this is a like podcast where two Germans are like trying to find the right words in English. So and that was also one of the reviews I got. Funny enough, early times. And you were like you weren't hired because of your English or something, or?
Yeah, exactly. So no, that's a true story. So I'm actually based. I grew up, born and grew up in the Düsseldorf region, and Düsseldorf used to be in 25 years ago here in Germany, the telecommunication hub. Before then probably now with Munich kind of took over, but before that you had actually like Deutsche Telekom headquarter in Bonn, not too far away. Then Vodafone, a European headquarter in Düsseldorf, is still a large campus there. And then because of that, Telekom and Vodafone close by the cellular, so the mobile communication industry settled here in the region of Düsseldorf. You had then vendors like Motorola, but Ericsson, Nokia, and many others, and they settled in 1992. So we're talking really early days here. It's a few years ago, right? And because of the digital cellular business just starting in Europe, remember the first GSM standard emerged out of North Europe. So the Scandinavian Nokia and Ericsson really not invented the standard, but have been the main driver globally in the GSM standardization body. So long story short, you had a lot of telco businesses and know-how here in Düsseldorf, and I figured I kind of felt that was really a booming business. It made a lot of sense to me, and actually at that time people were thinking that will be a B2B business, not like today, right? It was really in the old days, in the starting days of these cellular communication. And I really wanted to then join one of these companies, a cool Scandinavian company. I read about them. They had a different way of working, low hierarchy, cross-functional teams, a lot of stuff we are talking today about. Actually, I could do feel was part of a Scandinavian culture, and they embedded it into the organizations. So I really wanted to join them. And I applied for an interview with Nokia, and they invited me for an interview. And in that time, 92 was actually 92, 93. It was really booming. They were looking for hundreds and hundreds of people joining, right? So they invited me to a hotel because they couldn't find meeting rooms. They were all occupied, even on the floor. People were sitting with a desk on floors. And so it was totally boom time in that industry. Um, and so I actually again remember I visited the hotel. I drove with the elevator up, was the sixth floor on the hotel in Düsseldorf. And it was just a normal room. And two ladies from the HR, one a consultant and one HR lady, they were sitting there in the room on chairs. And they asked me to sit on the bed. So I was sitting myself, a really small, normal hotel room. And I was sitting there, and then they interviewed me on and then actually after half an hour, listen, I think you fit to our company. We want to hire you. Let's switch now to English. And that's the last thing we really need to check from you. And since I never really was really, not at school or during, studies really abroad, and I had very, not very frequent English conversations up to then. I didn't pass that test. I didn't pass my English test, so to speak, in my first interview, and I really was upset about that because I wanted to join them. So I went back to the elevator, and just before I reached ground level, there was a mirror. The door closed. There was a mirror. I looked at myself, and I knew I made the decision that I go and for half a year or year to the US to work there and improve my English. Right. So that was something which I did then finally. 2 weeks later, I was in a plane on my way to San Francisco. And started to work over there for some time.
Cool. And then you had the idea for what Cumulocity is today, or what Cumulocity was yesterday, or when did that happen?
No, that happened then much, much later. I mean, we are now talking about 93, 94. Right?
Okay. Well.
So exactly. So that was much later. So what I did is I went to the US. Actually, a friend of mine was there. So I had an easy, arrival. I could sleep there and so on. I settled myself and I found a job, and then I sort of started to improve my English. I actually then applied back to Nokia. So that's the story. That's the twist here. I applied from the US while I was there. I applied for again with Nokia, and actually they invited me then. And then this, fast forward a year later, right? I had my interview, and then finally they hired me. So I started then working really with Nokia in '94. So that's and was my first, let's say, 10 years in a professional career was really with Nokia in telecommunication business.
And was that more like engineering related, or what were you doing then?
Yes, in the beginning, I was really an engineer, right? But then very fast, because the business was so fast growing. I mean, we doubled revenues every year, and then we even doubled it every half a year and so on. I mean, this was really boom time in the cellular business and the mobile communication business. And so I then became 2 years later product manager. Then from that, I became a program manager and then so on. And so it really, I really moved very fast out of the engineering more into, I would say, a technical business oriented job.
A few years to the future.
Yes.
How did Cumulocity happen? And I think like then also you moved more like towards technical roles. Like why did that happen? Like I mean, obviously, like a CTO is in most cases more like a leadership role. But how did Cumulocity happen, and why? And why did you sell? And well, then next question: why did you buy back?
Quite a few questions. Yeah.
Yes.
So with Nokia, then I moved to the headquarters. So at some point of time, someone asked me, "Hey, would you be interested to come over as an expat and work in Helsinki, or actually in Espoo, which is next to Helsinki?" So I did that more than 3 years. I was based in Helsinki, and I became quite focused on new innovation. So I was then heading a program for introducing new technology, new innovations to our cellular telco customers globally, right? And so I was actually managing a team out of Helsinki, doing that for some time. But then my my girlfriend today, my wife, she was actually with me in Helsinki and in Finland. We decided, okay, our 3 years Northern Europe, really north of Northern Europe, let's put it this way, is enough. So we went to the UK, still with Nokia, where I did an MBA at London Business School, which was financed by Nokia. So they sponsored me a lot in my earlier years of my professional career. So I actually did a Master of Business Administration in addition to my technical background. And I think that was very good because that helped me not only to, let's say, appreciate technology and understand technology, but also to really always ask why. I mean, why do we have that technology? What is the purpose of the technology? What do we want to achieve? What is the real um, real strategy behind that? And so this kind of a combination of an engineering role or engineering education and then a business education was very helpful for me. And what then happened is I have been asked to go to set up an innovation incubator for Nokia in Mountain View in the Bay Area. So I was actually already like 3 years in Finland, 5 years in London, and I moved actually from there to the Bay Area to Mountain View, and that's why actually the idea of Cumulocity emerged. That's why I'm telling you the journey here, how it worked really, because when I had the responsibility for that incubation unit, we incubated, and that was now 2010. So 15 years ago, we incubated around cloud computing. And cloud computing 15 years ago, I mean, it always sounds crazy from today's point of view when you think about what happened with the hyperscalers. But 15 years ago was the early days of AWS, really the early days of AWS. And I remember I met Vogel, the CTO of Amazon,
Werner
and
Vogels,
not
yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
Vogels a few times over there. There was really enthusiastic debate about, is it going to be a big business or not? Who's going to outsource the data centers in these hyperscaler environments? I mean, this is really early days, and there was in 2010, and we decided then in Nokia we wanted to turn our telecom software stack and modernize it and actually develop it as a cloud ready software. Right, so it was very early days in incubation. So we created a cloud, I would say a cloud computing competence center, so to speak. That would be the wording today. Where we created or incorporate a lot of knowledge. We hired external, we had internal people, and we engineered an architecture, the foundation. Let's put it this way: the foundation of the next generation of software stack for the telco products in Nokia. And Nokia networks. So it's really the network division, the infrastructure division. And in addition to the core business innovation of modernizing the software stack, we had an incubation unit with 10 different startup-like incubators, right? So we separated them out of the normal business and an early corporate incubator like we do see nowadays still. I think they used to be on vogue later, but I'm not sure if they're still really on vogue anymore. Yeah? But we have been really very early on that. Again, we are talking now 2010, 2012, and we long story short, there I got really into the machine to machine and IoT communication stuff. And then we spun off that business. So I actually went to the board of Nokia and I pitched it, and then we basically got an alignment. We agreed on the purchase price, and then we did actually it was a few weeks. It was very fast. We were able to separate Cumulocity from Nokia. And then we basically incorporated back here in Germany, because our idea was with that technology, really an IoT platform technology for industrial B2B use cases, because we as a team, we have been B2B, so really in a B2B software business. And so we felt it makes more sense to relocate out from Mountain View back in an industrial environment. So we actually moved back to Düsseldorf, where you have a lot of industrial companies surrounding.
And in a nutshell, so you're the master of management buyouts then, right? Because you also bought back from Software AG after selling it then again. And you might have more insights on IoT and how it's working than me. So, and what was the platform then in a nutshell? Was it like an alternative to MQTT? I guess not. But using MQTT and then device registry, etc., or what? Like, what do you do with IoT?
So the original idea of the platform was very straightforward. I would call it IoT device management. Mm-hmm. You know, because we saw that we actually our business proposition was based on the reflection that we saw the hardware prices were falling, right? So to connect things, the price of embedded hardware to be able to connect a machine and wind turbine and compressor and elevator or manufacturing on the shop floor, and that the hardware for the modems and the connectivity was actually going down almost every year, 20%. That's what we perceived. And then the connectivity cost, also the cellular connectivity cost was going down also heavily. But what didn't happen was in the back of the solution cost and the operational cost to maintain these devices or these fleets of machines, that wasn't reducing. We saw that actually increasing. And because a lot of system integrators and software shops did actually then build solutions on top of these connected devices or machines. And that was almost like they reinvented the wheel again and again and again. That's still happening today, by the way. You know, you see a lot of do-it-yourself developments on top of a hyperscaler environment, but you do actually develop a software stack which is already available as a product, for example, with companies like Cumulocity or others. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, our original idea is still true, that we wanted to productize some of these bespoke development and make it available as a platform. Mm-hmm. And the first product was really device management, like including firmware management, software management over the air. So software firmware management updates over the air was part of that device management.
Okay, and then some sort of like a operating system plugin or service that you had then to run on all the devices that then reports back, does executes the firmware updates on depending on the platform, I guess, and some monitoring aspect and some communication aspect as well, or machine to machine communication.
Yes, absolutely. So the whole life cycle of that, but also then, because in the IoT architecture, what you typically do is it's a real time connectivity. It's different to the architecture before. Let me give you an example. One of our clients here in Germany is Enercon. So wind turbine OEM. So they produce wind turbines and they sell it almost globally. So we have connected about 30,000 wind turbines with them. And why they're actually quite noisy. They have 20,000 data points they produce and so on. So there's I think we pump 50 terabyte of data a month into the cloud data lake for them and so on. So there's a lot of data collected. But what is actually the essence of an IoT architecture here is that you have a real-time connected asset you can manage. Yeah? So you have the alarms in real time, you have condition monitoring, and you have a feedback loop. So you can do also parameter settings, and you can do the software and firmware management and so on. When you compare that to the technology which was available before, there was really a VPN system where you needed to dial into the wind turbine, sort of, like, desktop streaming type of applications. Yeah. And then you checked the very ugly user interface with this tree structure. And then you needed to look into, is there some problem or not? And what is happening and so on. So it was actually there was no real-time analytics happening in the background at all. Really just connecting to that wind turbine with a VPN, and it was kind of that was the previous generation. Yeah. And today it's very, very a lot of
I guess it grew.
automations.
I guess it grew.
It grew. Yeah.
But why did you then, like, you sold, which I think was then like that, also that wish of every founder at a certain point, I might merge it into something bigger and like achieve financial freedom, etc. I can imagine. And then you bought back after you also bought from Nokia. How did that feel, and why did you do that? Was it like emotional, strategic, or why did you do it?
Yeah, so when we actually grow the business, Tobias, before I tell you the reason why we sold it, I actually I want to share you with one thing what I really learned right at the beginning. So we had a very nice technology, very nice architecture at the beginning. With a clear API, REST API structure. And remember, that is 2012, native cloud, multi-tenancy, highly scalable, horizontal scalable. We had really, for each tenant, we provision in own database. We use MongoDB, document-oriented JSON. So we put a lot of new latest technology into it. That's 2012, right? And then, but interesting one, when we did our first customer meetings and so on, then we presented the slides, we did explain what the technology does and so on. And then these people are, okay, then let's show me. What do you have? So we didn't actually, because we couldn't show anything. We just had APIs, right? So our idea was that people would utilize and call the APIs and utilize our platform, with our domain model, but there was no application, no UI. So we then actually came up with that device management as our first application.
You then built that old school UI with an ugly tree, etc.
No, then we actually used a very modern UI. I have to say, no ugly tree, and it became a differentiator, actually, to be perfectly honest, because we did really, then for these people, it looked like science fiction because it was very modern, web UI driven and so on, and intuitive. But what was quite an interesting one, our perception was almost like we sell it to the developer persona, because the REST API and a good documentation would be enough. Mm-hmm. But the reality was that we sold our technology to OT people who wanted to have more than just APIs, because they were not software engineers, right? They were operational technology people who were like product managers or field service managers or maintenance people and so on. And they wanted more. So we needed then to actually invest into heavily into our application and UI framework and so on. And long story short, then yes, then actually we did in the beginning, the first 18 months was super tough. Very little uptake, I have to say. A lot of pilots, prototyping, MVPs, but no real commercialization. And then we won our first customer. And then it actually, we felt, after 2.5 years, hey, here's something happening, because people were really subscribing. We had an online subscription free trials and so on. And we saw also large software companies getting in contact with us. And one of them was Software AG, and they wanted to acquire us, but we didn't agree. Because I felt it was much too early, and we just enjoyed our ride really. And then they OEM'd us. So they took us into their product offering, OEM'd us, and sold us through their sales channel. And Software AG used to be second biggest software company in Germany, 5,000 people, 1 billion revenue, and really B2B software company. Huh? And
with a big sales team, I guess, right?
With a very big sales team, exactly. Yeah. And so they took us as an OEM and sold it, and became quite successful. They kind of became very fast our second biggest partner, and then suddenly the biggest partner. And so they came back because they actually now appreciated the software even more, because they could see, hey, they can also sell it. They could also be successful with it, and the OEM worked. So the CEO at that time came back. He did contact me. He visited me. We discussed, and then finally we agreed to partner with software. I always say to partner with them. You call it an exit. I call it a partnership with Software AG, which resulted into a takeover. So they acquired 100% of the company. Yeah.
Okay.
And then now you ask, why did that happen? Why did we do that? And that happened in 2017, already 8 years ago now. And at that point of time, we were really at the hype cycle, kind of still not at the top of the IoT hype cycle or AI-IoT hype cycle, but really, really growing a lot in that dimension. And people were really looking into industrial Internet of Things being the new big thing, a bit like what AI is today. And hopefully we have time to talk about that later on. So my idea, and I actually there were announcements of big players. For example, Microsoft announced they will invest 5 billion into the IoT market. Google announced their IoT strategy. AWS followed. Other platforms at that point of time, Gartner analyst told me they have counted 640 or 650 IoT platforms being available globally. Yeah. So, that was really overwhelming what was happening. And since, Software AG appreciated our software, they proven that they could sell it. They have been successful with it. They also knew what it is worth. So it kind of fitted. I mean, it fit. So it was more a strategic decision to say, hey, it's better to team up with Software AG now and use our technology. We felt we were a bit advanced, or because of our early start, we felt we were, from a technology point of view, ahead. Maybe PTC ThingWorx and us were kind of on that same level at the time, technology wise, at least. Yeah. And so we wanted to capitalize on that, and we couldn't be available in like 70 countries at once, like what Software AG did offer us, right? So they really offered us to continue with our IoT and sell it in 70 countries globally at once. And they made an attractive offer, to be perfectly frank with you. So it fitted into the competitive landscape of being squeezed a bit with the big players, and having that opportunity to really grow even faster with Software AG.
And it ultimately ended up not working out, or why did you then jump off after a few years, or buy back after a few years?
Yeah, so no, actually, it worked very well. By the way, I then actually left the IoT domain because there was a new CEO coming in Software AG, and he asked me to become the CTO of the whole Software AG group at that point of time. And so I lost a bit the connection to the IoT business. I looked more towards IT related solution offering, and helped to let's say, modernize some of the software of Software AG. So when they acquired us, we have been, I think, the only commercial cloud product in the entire company. Think about that. So Software AG, very traditional company. In 2017, still most of the company or most of the business was really enterprise architecture with on-prem and private data center deployments. And then they used Cumulocity also to help spearheading from a business model, from a business transformation, from a software architecture point of view. So that's why I became group CTO, and it worked really well. Why did I buy it back then? Actually, that only happened summer last year, so almost a year ago. And the reason was really, first of all, there was an opportunity to buy it back because Software G was acquired by Silver Lake Partners here in Germany. So Silver Lake Partners took over Software AG. I think it was in 22, and took Software AG private. So used to be a stock traded, a public company, and then took us private, and so I foresaw an opportunity that they probably will optimize the operation. There were 7 different product units, and you can see it today. They sold 5 out of the 7, so I kind of anticipated that. I mean, it wasn't too difficult to anticipate. Let's put it in this way. So I anticipated that there's actually an opportunity to go back into that IoT business with selling the business back from Silver Lake Partners. So that was really
So typical private equity comes in, wants to optimize business, wants to get rid of certain business lines that are maybe like too small or whatever, not profitable enough, whatever, or not fitting to the core strategy of the new.
Yeah, exactly. Or even, I mean, if you look at Software AG today, they sold what methods that used to be the back and the integration business, StreamSet that used to be kind of a data fabric tool. They sold actually out of 7 businesses already 5. There are 2 left. And there are rumors in the market that they also sell these other 2. So what they did is really cut it into pieces and sold the
like
pieces.
Axel Springer, right? Where like all the digital assets or most of the digital assets were also sold by KKR. Yeah. So that's logic, and that's lucky you then. I would say, like as long as your plan plays out. What do you do differently from since then? Like you mentioned AI as like kind of a game changer for you as well. Is that like what really motivates you now, or like after so many years, or what?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what is quite interesting if you think about when you're working on a project for so many years, all the changes what happened technology wise, it's quite a lot with Kubernetes, with CI/CD. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. We also listen to other companies. You always have to modernize technology wise, but what I also I'm a strong believer in the bridge between operational technology and IT technology, right? In simple terms, like the physical world, I do see a lot of benefits that the physical world will be virtualized. And think about, there's a lot of sensor technology happening nowadays. I mean, on average, we don't know it, but we on average get in contact with almost 30 sensors a day. Yeah. Even so, there are simple sensors like, like meeting room, temperature sensors, meeting room occupation or whatever, water sensors, light sensor. I mean, there's a lot, but it's increasing, continuously increasing. Yeah. So I do believe the physical world will be automated through digitalization. And that is something I believe, I always believed in. And then this connected world, how it's often referred to, is something I see emerging. Every day it's even getting closer to it. And you see that with AI as well. I think NVIDIA just in January they launched a foundation model called Cosmos, which is their open source model to the physical world. They kind of see the next growth engine really coming from robotics and digitalizing the physical world. So because NVIDIA is looking for data, right? They're looking for more and more data which they can compute with their GPUs, and that's what is happening. There's a lot of attention and focus, and that's what I believe as well. If you I mentioned the 50 terabytes of data from a wind turbine maker, right? Which we generate. A month. So this is just one example of it. And the more of these examples, the more concrete use cases are emerging, the more it becomes clear that AI is just another accelerator for driving the connected world. So it's another motivation because you can leverage and automate workflows even more efficiently with an AI strategy than without an AI strategy. And so that was one of the reasons why we as a management team, not only me, it's a management team, we are 5 of us, we truly believe in the opportunity to drive an IoT platform like we used to be into what we call nowadays an AIoT platform. So it's the new term emerging, AIoT, and we are strong believers in that.
That's an interesting term. AI is kind of getting commoditized, right? But I think use cases still win. What does that mean from your perspective for people building platforms like you do in a way today?
Yeah.
How do you think about that? Like with AI, like you see AI around the corner, it's getting commoditized. How can you still win as like someone who operates a platform?
No, that's a very strategic, very important question, and I think when I personally look at it is that um, let's say the data topic has become super important for many of our clients. They understand how important data is. It has been. I mean, it's not an old. That's an old news, I know, but it's just becoming more important for industrial companies as well, right? So. So in the B2B context, right, in the manufacturing and on the shop floor, also OEMs producing machines, like I give the example with a wind turbine or with any other type of machines with compressors, or even for elevators. One of our clients, Schindler, connected almost 1 million elevators, and data, how to analyze the data in real time, predict things, but also automate workflows is super important. And this is what our technology nowadays does. It started with an IoT device management, yes, and it's still needed. Yeah, it's still needed. You need to maintain the life cycle of your machines and fleets in the remote places out there. But you also need to focus on the data acquisition, the data normalization, the contextualization of the data. So you need to help also structure the data, because that is the foundation for your training, for your AI model training, for example, in machine learning use cases, which we have a lot nowadays, right? And so our platform is doing that. So we do a lot of data acquisition. We keep typically, we call it a speed layer architecture. We keep the real time or near real time or a few weeks of data within our platform, but we also do a lot of offloading into a cloud data lake. And we have actually a real time offloading where you basically transform data into a packet, or nowadays iceberg file format with a metadata enrichment of a packet file format, and then you store it in a data lake, which has become for many of our clients the let's say the foundation for their digitalization strategies. And we feed this data lake in real time, which is super important because it's not like 3 days old, 5 days old. It's really, IT real time. It can be a minute old or something like this. Yeah, but it's in near real time. And this is our platform proposition nowadays. So it's not just device management, still important, but it's also the whole data operationalization, the data ops part. And then another very important aspect, many people forget about that, Tobias, is if you, let's say you do machine learning, you train your models on the machine learning. At the end of the day, in our business, that means you have, let's say, 10,000 machines out there. Like an American client of us, Solenis. They have 10,000 machines out there. And then if you train the model, so you need to actually ensure that the latest model is running on your machine. So how do you do that? It's of course, again, software management. That is our machine again, our platform again. So we do really the loop. So we help collect the data, to normalize the data, to enrich the data in a format which is really productive for data analytics and machine learning or AI. And then we actually help to operationalize these models and insights. So these IoT architecture gives you these both loops. And a lot of our clients, they are coming from a one-way street. They collected data, they did something, but they couldn't deploy it. So there was a gap. We call it mind the gap problem. There was a gap actually to to then make use out of your findings and really operationalize your findings. And with an AIoT platform like Cumulocity, that's absolutely possible to do. I hope that makes. What do you think? I hope that makes sense.
I just wonder how much happens on the edge and how much happens in a centralized data center. I guess like most of it happens on a hyperscaler somewhere, right? In some centralized instance or some client-specific instance, or is there anything that happens at the edge on your devices or like at your clients in your client's location or data center, or where does it happen?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think there's a big movement or trend towards edge nowadays. I think at least I would call it hybrid. So we used to have, I would say, a lot of cloud deployments, but nowadays it's cloud and edge, and in some cases it's also really edge only. And then in our technology stack, we support all of that. We support actually small, low footprint devices with an open source initiative, synedge.io. Then we have our PC, our industrial PC based edge, which is the same software code then which we run in the cloud. So that means that when you, for example, operationalize or deploy or innovate applications in the cloud, and you have you want to internationalize and, for example, expand to regions where cloud operation from US or from Europe isn't easy because of regulatory restrictions, etc., then you can easily deploy that at the customer side on an edge. Because it's the same API structure, it's really the same software, or we call it SIG Edge. It's the same as we have in the cloud and then the Syn Edge. And Edge is fundamentally increasing. The importance is increasing as also the amount of data is increasing a lot. Yeah.
Understood. Like as you do that for a few years, how much technical debt is survivable? I guess you have you established, or you've built quite a lot of different directions, and you must have dealt with like a lot of debt on the way and a lot of legacy just through like the different phases you went through, right? Like you mentioned, like, I don't know, microservices, Kubernetes, now AI around the corner, like I guess own protocols on IoT, etc. While there were like others that now kind of maybe are the survivors like MQTT, Modbus, etc. It's like it sounds like a mess where you really must have dealt with a lot and must have also sunsetted a lot of your products again and a lot of like many of your product parts again and pieces again. How do you deal with it? Like how much like is it? How much can you deal with?
Yeah, that's the what you're just describing is actually the, let's say, the nightmare of our CTO and the in Cumulocity. So he has to deal with a lot of stuff, and you're absolutely right when you think these OT technology stack is we support hundreds of different field protocols. It's amazing. It's like um, there's some famous ones with Modbus, MBus, CAN-bus, but there are a lot of protocols which are not known, but we still have to support them because you need to support them because this is the language the machines really speak, the protocol of the machine, and we want to get the data of the machine into the cloud. So you need you need to adapt these into in our case, it's often an MQTT based cloud ready connector because these field protocols are not cloud ready. They're not secure enough, etc. You really need to use, MQTT as our main protocol to connect these things but if you think about these field protocols, you have to maintain, you have to release cycle that, and so on, and so it's not an easy task. And a few years ago, we have decided to do that through in that domain, specific domain, through an ecosystem partnership. So we have what we call device certified partners, like about 100 partners globally who have gateways and PLCs and all of that industrial hardware, IO link type of master units and so on. There's a lot. And they certify with our Cumulocity cloud connectivity. So that is basically we deliver the software to these devices from a cloud point of view, and they are responsible for mapping their proprietary protocol into our domain model so that they can actually use and benefit from our ready-to-use applications at Cumulocity. Well, of course, we need to map it into our model, right? And so that is a few years ago. So that helped us a lot nowadays. So we have partners, as for example, a Japanese partner with a lot of business in Japan. A Japanese partner, Takebishi, as the name. No one knows that it's really an IoT-based, OT-based company, but they support 320 different PLC protocols globally.
Sounds painful, but I also guess that you're not able to like offload everything of that like, let's say, crazy depth. Also, if you just look at how your platform evolved, but maybe next time we have to have a drink before, so you actually tell me the truth.
No, but you're right. Honestly, yes. We also maintain a lot of for example, narrowband IoT adapters, which are a part of the telco standards, 3GPP standard, or you have OMA, Open Mobile Alliance standards with lightweight M2M, because you have a small devices, small edge sensors, which you want to connect. It's super important that you have a protocol which helps you to prolong the battery lifetime and reduce the data communication. And so there's a lot of stuff we still support natively and have to maintain. But then the big renovation which we did on that software stack, because when in 2012 we started, let's be open here, we started a bit monolithic because the architecture was at that point of time a cloud-based architecture, which was actually from today's point of view would look very monolithic. Yeah, one big piece of software. And we then introduced Kubernetes in 2016, 17. Before we got acquired, we started actually to deploy. We have been one of the first commercial deployments in Kubernetes. What we did with it, we started to cut our software into microservices pieces. So we have been really putting a lot of effort into re-engineering and so on. And this is to some extent still happening. Yeah? But out of the monolithic software we started, we now have about 30 plus microservices in the backend running on our Kubernetes cluster. So we really modernized and cut things into pieces. And I think there was we didn't know would it be the right strategy or not, but it was the absolutely right thing to do, because after that we did then continuous integration, continuous deployment. If you wouldn't be able to do that, if you wouldn't be able to split your organizational software engineering team into these microservices teams, so that they can actually deploy the software. So yeah, but it's still, I think we have still a lot of technology debt. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, and also microservices can lead to a lot of trouble as well. But yeah, like we all know that as of
Yeah,
today,
exactly.
we're all wise and old. Um, I still have a little surprise for you, like as an outro question, because we like talk quite a lot and super interesting stuff you have in the backpack. But let's imagine the former Nokia CTO gave me a device like back in the 90s that he invented. They never made it to like market readiness, but imagine they wanted to back in the days invent the time machine. And they were successful. They never were able to release that because like beforehand the mobile phone market crashed really for them because of the iPhone, etc. And imagine like we can now dial a year, and we dial 1994. And that was the year when you were in LA meeting the Nokia folks, and you just returned from that meeting like super frustrated because of the English problem, let's say. And you look in the mirror right now. We observe yourself. You look in the mirror, yeah, you just like ask yourself like, hey, why did that happen? And you now would have the chance to whisper something into your younger self's ears. What would that be?
It's a very complicated time travel you just indicated, but that's it's a it's a good question. So what should I have known at that point of time, which I know now? It's there's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, uh, honestly, I think the most, to me personally, the most important lesson is it's not really the technology stack, is how to deal and manage and work with people. That is my most important lesson over the years. Um, because grew up with my professional career in the Scandinavian background, which was low hierarchy. I remember in Espoo, I was based in Espoo. I mentioned it earlier. In the fourth floor, the CEO of Nokia was just a few tables away. He was sitting in an open desk environment. That is really now 25 years ago, right? The Jorma Ollila was his name, the CEO of Nokia, and it was sitting just 5 desks away in an open environment, and that's um, uh, my kind of learning from that was to be actually to gain authority through knowledge and competences, and not through hierarchies and titles. That's a very simple thing, but easy to say. But that's something I learned many years, and in order to get that, to gain these, I think you have to be a trusted person, and that's the foundation for everything, and that means you should be just yourself. And I mean that's easy to say. I know that some business environments where you it's maybe not as easy as in the IT business, right? I appreciate that, but that really, in the first years of my career, I think I was too focused on how I perceive what I'm doing. I wasn't always myself, right? I was kind of feeling that would weaken me. But actually, it's the opposite. It strengthens you as a leader if you can be very open, very direct, and do not hide anything. Because in the mid and long run, this is becoming visible, and people start not to trust you anymore. And I think that has been a learning. It took me 15 years, 20 years of my career to really appreciate and learn that. That is important to me, is really open, frank communication and setting up a trustful environment.
Yeah, I think that took many traditional CTOs and CEOs a while to really like internalize that, right? Like this, like that leadership is changing and that you like rarely lead through authority.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned to me, Tobias, if I may ask you a question, and you mentioned to me that you are also investing into SaaS startups, etc. And I think it's probably for you the same. What you do is you look into the leadership teams, right, as a key indicator. It's the same. It is in a way. When you do that and you learn to read people, you will identify easily if this people is open and authentic, or is this this person actually playing a role which is actually in the mid and long run not paying off.
Yeah. You start seeing features in people like, hey, this Bernd guy.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, you got me. Exactly. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Great discussion. Was really, really nice talking to you finally. And I wish you a nice day in Düsseldorf then.
Yeah, same to you in Hamburg or in Berlin? Where are you
Hamburg.
at the moment?
I'm in Hamburg.
I wish you a nice day in Hamburg then. And so if some of the audience want to get in contact with us at Cumulocity or with me personally, I'm easily reachable through LinkedIn. Just as a small advertising here at the end.
Yeah, then you see that he's at Cumulocity and investing into, 20 different VC funds or something.
Not so many, but a few. Exactly.
Big investor. Thanks a lot, Bernd, and have a great day.
Have a great too. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the AlphaList podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. AlphaList is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on AlphaList, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.
Dieser Podcast wird produziert von Podstars bei OMR.